Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ELEC5618 Software Quality Engineering lecture. Thank you very much for your time today, and it's good to have you here. And I hope you are having a great evening. Yeah, and also I hope everyone can hear me very well and clearly. Yeah. So thank you very much. In the last 2 weeks, we have been looking at few techniques, few concepts, and also trying to understand software quality engineering, the activities associated with it, and also few techniques that can be applied to ensure that you satisfy the needs, the wants, and also the expectations of your stakeholder. Today, we're going to be looking at planning, assurance, and control. How do you ensure that in order for you to satisfy the needs, the wants, and expectations of your stakeholder, the planning, the assurances, and the control will be done in line with what has been agreed upon in a particular project, in this case, your project. So feel free to use your projects as an example to give you more understanding about these few techniques. And then we're going to also be using your project as a form of example to give you much more understanding and also to give you much more information on how many of these concepts relate to your project. So for this week, in this lecture, we'll be looking at the planning, assurance, and control. And then during the lecture, we're also going to talk about the structure of the software quality plan, the standards on software quality, and then quality assurance and control. In the first part of the lecture, we're going to look at these few items, and then the remaining items, we're going to look at them in the second part of the lecture, which is going to be a very interactive lecture where I would expect us to talk together, discuss, and see how we can answer many of the questions together. So please feel free to express yourself. Your exam is about an hour and a half. So this is where you can make those mistakes, those errors while responding to questions, trying out what you think might be the best answer to a question, and then we can do it together. If we have to correct ourselves, we can do that. So it's much more easier for you to ask all the questions here and also get insight on either much more better possible answers to questions or understand how to look at scenario-based questions that you might come across in the exam. And then this week in the lecture, starting from yesterday, you have started working at the quality assurance in your project, which in this case, the activities you have been working on in your project include trying to understand those quality assurance measures that are related to your project. In this case, you have been looking at few concepts like the walkthrough procedure, evaluation process, certain testing mechanisms that could be applied in your project, and also a form of code review process and many other processes that you may come across in the laboratory document. It's very important for you to understand that the novelty is very important. You're allowed to express yourself based on what project you're working on, because you're all working on separate projects. And then your quality assurance factors or mechanisms might be a little bit different, either in terms of the factors or in terms of the presentation of those mechanisms. So please look at the source code of your project very carefully. There might be some few folders that could help you to understand some information about the project, which is why documentation is an important and integral part of software quality assurance. So please take note of all those folders and then see how they can be of use to you in your project. And also by now, in the laboratory session, many of us already have a group Now we have 3 tutors that will be working very closely with you in the laboratory session. So each and every session, you're going to be having 3 tutors. So please feel free to ask any questions. All our tutors are there to work with you, to assist you, and to support you in your project. Possibly act as your stakeholder, give you some guidances, and then you can make those decisions that you feel is very much appropriate in your project. Take a look at the work plan, take a look at the questions that you have been asked, and try and use those content in presenting your documents. Myself, I'm very much available anytime you have any questions on the project, on the lecture, you need more information, you want to talk to me, either via Zoom or via emails, please feel free anytime. I'm always very happy to talk to you and to assist as much as I can. So please ensure that all the content for each and every lecture is taken care of before the next lecture. The more you combine the tasks together for every lecture, the more difficult it is for you to be able to complete all those tasks required for each and every laboratory session. And also, communication is one of the major aspects of your project, collaboration as well. So ensure that you can find a way of reaching agreement together where you have deadlocks and then you find it so hard to decide. You have a leader in the group or you have a deputy leader in the group. Such a leader can make the final call, because one of the responsibilities of a leader is to actually make those calls when you're having problems in your project. And if you feel you still can't solve the problem, or you feel the response given to you by your leader, you're not very much satisfied, we are here to help you and to see how we can make things work so that you're happy in the project. So please work on the quality assurance mechanism of your project. Try and understand how you want to provide a form of demonstration process when you're looking at improving the outcome, of your project, in this case, related to the walkthrough procedure, or take a look at the code review process, whereby you want to ensure that you have a way of seeing or understanding what alterations or trying to explore the source code that has been given to you. And there are many other mechanisms that you have been given. So please take a look at them, work together as a group, and then decide on what best possible procedure or process representation relates to your group. In this case, your project. In this week as well, we expect you to read on the structure of quality plan. In this case, the software quality plan. You can look at the appendix document you have, and then you have some few resources available online that you can have a look at them. Some of all these resources could be generic, while some of them could be related to a particular project. So also feel free to relate such kind of content to your project as well. Understand the standards that are available for software quality, so read about them as well. And also read about the quality assurance and a form of control. So we are also going to look into all these things in this lecture, and then you can take many of the concepts we're going to talk about and take them into your project as well. At the end of the day, we expect you to create the quality assurance document, which you already have and you're working on in the laboratory. In this week as well, we expect you to know what software quality assurance is all about, what type of information you need to include in such a plan, the reason why standards for software quality exist, and then for you to understand the different stages of when you're trying to handle defects, which I'm sure many of us at the moment have been able to come up with few defects associated with our projects. So how do you plan to handle those defects? We're going to look into some few stages in which that can be done. And then we also try to understand those quality assurance features that are present in the project you have selected. So based on the scenario we have, you can have a look at them and also relate that to the project you have. And then the assignment for this week, which in this case focuses on your laboratory session, will be the initial quality assurance mechanisms. So the sample document you have on Canvas are just sample documents. Please feel free to enhance those documents, add more content that you feel are very much related to your project. And if you have any questions or you need direction or you're finding it so hard to understand, do I need to put this content into it? Please feel free to ask your tutors, and including myself. And also, you can also have a look at the standard documents and then see if that feature is available there. Automatically, that shows that you can also have that same feature in your quality assurance mechanism document. So it's very important for us to understand that when it comes to software quality, we have three major activities. The first one include the planning, the second one, assurance, and the last one, we have the control. It's very important for us to plan before we start to evaluate or trying to meet what are those relevant standards or what are those managerial decisions or planning or the pressures or any other thing that's coming up for either from the business or from the project. The first thing we do is plan. And when we plan, we try to understand what? The relevant quality standards and regulations. So building up on what we discussed last week, the standards and regulation are an integral part of your project. So you need to identify those standards and regulations. And in doing that, ensure that it relates to your project and also your stakeholders' expectations. When we understand what are the standards, regulations are all about that we're going to follow in our project, then we need to define those quality requirements and goals to be achieved. Remember, this has to be also based on the stakeholders' needs, wants, and expectations. And then you look at the few software quality procedures that might be appropriate or suitable for your project. In this case, you may be working on a game-based project. I'm working on maybe on, let's say, an ERP, that's enterprise resource planning project. Certain software quality procedures that may apply in the game project may not apply in the enterprise resource planning project. So you have to look at the ones that you feel are very much related to your project. And also, you are allowed to introduce new procedures, but please, before you think about that, look at the standards, regulations, and the agreement with your stakeholder before you go ahead and start thinking about introducing new forms of procedures. But the major part of it is while you're trying to plan on how you want to embark in terms of the software quality project, the planning phase also supports and allows you to introduce new procedures that you feel are missing or an integral part of your project. It's very possible that a standard or regulation you're using may be missing one or two procedures that you feel are needed. You can borrow those procedures from another standard, bring it into your standard. That way you have a reference to say, this is why I'm using this, because I want to be able to satisfy or achieve this particular requirement or goals. And to do that, I need this procedure either from this standard or regulation as a form of requirement from the government or from your stakeholders in general. But the most important thing is that new procedure would support your software quality planning. And also you're allowed to use tools for you to be able to either map the requirement, to the expectations of your stakeholder or to how you plan to achieve them. You can use tools to keep record, to keep track, or to do some analysis or review. So this depends on your project, which in this case includes you and then, the company in general. So after planning, then you want to move into the assurance, where you have to stand out evaluating the processes to ensure that those standards, those requirements, those goals will be achieved. Then at this point, you're free from any technical, managerial, or financial pressure, because from the planning phase, a lot of people will be saying so many things. So please take note in your project. Your group members will be throwing up, a lot of requirements. Let's do this, let's do that. Look at this process. Can we do it this way? Yes, you can do a lot of things. But don't do it under pressure, either as a leader or as a group. You look for what really works for you. And then what? Satisfy the work plan in the laboratory document. You can do more than that if you want to. But don't be under any pressure from anyone, team member, or anybody. Feel free to express yourself in the project, because you're going to be faced with this kind of pressure when you start working in the industry, either from the managerial team or coming from your technical team. A lot of pressure. So this is the best time for you to understand how to handle this pressure. And to do that, always stick with what has been agreed upon in the project. The standards, regulations, the requirement, the goals have been achieved. So you can face this pressure during the planning phase, but when you move into the SQA, software quality assurance, you're free from all this pressure. And then it also supports the systematic planning and implementation of what you have discussed from the beginning of the project. At the end of the day, you will be able to fulfill those requirements, and also stakeholders' considerations. External budgets, external considerations, such as schedule and budget, are also supported in these activities. And then when you now move into the control phase, you're looking at a set of procedures that would ensure that you meet these goals, and then your result can be monitored so that you can have a form of adequate or appropriate control. At the point of the control, you're free from any high defect rate. There might be low defect rates that you come across, but at least you're free from the high ones that may have huge or negative impact on your project. It also supports systematic checking. Your non-functional and functional requirements are also being supported. So please take note. What might be a functional requirement in my project, that is Sadiq's project, may not be a functional requirement, say, in Alex's projects. Many projects would always have set of requirements. However, there are some requirements, they are actually very important in a project, and that is why we have those standards, so that we can tell our stakeholders or our managerial board that these requirements are what this standard has put forward, that they have to be satisfied. So that way you're sure that at least you're going to be producing a very good product at the end of the day. But please take note as well is the requirements you may have. Say, for example, if I have reliability as a form of requirement in my own application or my own product, reliability may not be related to your product because of the nature of the project you're working on. So requirements in terms of the functional and functional requirement would always vary across different projects. However, some standards have set aside some key requirements which we are also going to look to in this particular lecture session. And at the end, the software quality control would lead to verification, validation, and also software testing to ensure that, yes, you have been able to meet or you've exceeded the quality goals associated with the project. So please take note, software quality control activities can be a part of software quality assurance activities. And that is why recently, many of us have been looking into the project that you're working on in the laboratory in such a way that you have been combining control into it, looking for those improvements towards those defects that you have. And from there, you now move into a form of testing, and then you see if you can actually check what the goals that have been satisfied, or monitor the ones that have been satisfied, and then the ones that are yet to be satisfied. So you're allowed to have that control within the software quality assurance. However, sometimes, depending on the nature of the project, depending on the requirements of the stakeholder, depending on how big the project is, it's always very advisable for you to have these three forms of separate activities. That way, you ensure that the requirements of your stakeholders will be adequately satisfied or fully satisfied. So before we talk about this standard, we looked into software quality and quantity in last week. So please take note. If you're being asked to come up with a project with X number of requirements or features, if you satisfy those requirements and everything is working appropriately as expected, that is what we call software quality. On the other hand, software quantity, looking at what we discussed last week in terms of should we release or not to release. You're trying to release even though few things have not been met, few features are not working properly, but you have other things you're looking into based on quantity and all that. So as such, those things you're looking into, even though those features have not been satisfied or they are not correctly working, even if they have been satisfied, in that case, it becomes your quantity. But as long as you have satisfied all those requirements, those features are working, and you ensure that, yes, that is what the software quality is all about. Yes, so we have a question that says, if we can differentiate between, we should repeat between the assurance and control. So the first thing we said is control can be part of assurance, which you have been doing already in your project, trying to look for those improvements. However, when you look at the software quality assurance, your main thing you're trying to do is what? You're trying to evaluate the software processes to ensure that what? You meet those relevant standards that have been defined, or they came up with those standards that are going to be followed in the project from the software quality planning activities. However, in the control activities, what you want to do is to ensure that all those goals are being met, and also you can monitor the result, from your software, and also it can lead to verification, validation, and so on, software testing as well. So we also have a question from Lirong that says, so usually control is after assurance, or are they coming together? Usually control comes after assurance. In some project, you may be doing the two at the same time without knowing, but control always comes after assurance. A good example would be in your project, you have seen those defects, and then you're trying to come up with the improvement as soon as possible, and then you're trying to do a lot of things. So you see, you're already adding the control to the assurance phase. But yes, control usually comes after the assurance. So now, let's look at this standard. If you look at the appendix document you have, we gave you the IEEE 730/2002 standard. And then we're also trying to discuss, and then we gave you another standard, the 730/2014 standard. So the 2014 has superseded the 2002 standard for a few major reasons which we're going to look into, but I'll give you very briefly now. The 2002 standard focuses on software quality assurance plan, trying to develop the plan. That is what it focuses on. So now they said, okay, there are some things that are missing that we need to, bring on board due to the changes, in the way the businesses are operating in the software, and then a lot of things are happening in the whole world. So as such, the 2014 was established to add more to planning. So in this case, you have like, before you think about planning, you initiate. And then after planning, you do control, and then you execute software quality assurance processes. So in summary, 2002 plan focuses on the plan, but 2024 also focuses on the plan, but in this case, the plan becomes one process. And in total, you have 4 different processes. So please, 4 different activities associated with the SQA processes, which is initiating, planning, controlling, and executing. So please take note of that. Yes, synchronous. Yes, you have more content. Yes, you have more content in the 2014. You have more enhancement. You have more activities. And then most importantly, rather than just planning, you're looking at planning as a form of what? Process. And then you have a lot of processes associated with this particular standard. So please take note of that very carefully. So the 730-2014 standard defines the requirement for initiating, planning, controlling, and executing software quality assurance processes. This could be either for a software development project or a maintenance project. So a maintenance project could now be you're being called upon to maintain a particular project. In this case, I may call upon you and say, oh, I'm having performance problems with my particular product. And then you're being awarded that kind of a project to see how you can improve on the performance of such a particular product. And also, this particular standard has been harmonized with the software lifecycle process, which is also associated with one of the standards as well that you can use to also improve on the software quality. But in this case, the standard itself will focus on the software lifecycle process. But when you now bring in the 730-2014 into it, you're trying to bring in that form of quality assurance processes into software lifecycle process. So let's look at our SDLC. From defining or your requirement gathering analysis, you do your design, you do your implementation, you do your deployment, and then you do your continuous improvement or monitoring. So imagine a situation whereby you are having that same quality assurance at each and every stage of the software development lifecycle. This is the beauty of taking the 730-2040 standard into the software lifecycle process, and also in terms of information content requirement, which is also associated with a standard as well. If you bring on board the 730-2014 into it, you're going to be improving such of requirement with the processes of the software quality assurance. The purpose of the 730-2040 is actually to produce justified statement of confidence that shows that your product meets its established requirement. It can be applied to software product as a part of a system, or you can apply it to a standalone software product itself. However, one of the limitations which a few experts out there feel is it does not impose constraint on the implementation or performance of activities or tasks. So to find a solution to this constraint, you could look into other standards or other regulations or other framework that could be used to see how you can bring on board a form of way in which the activities or tasks their performances, you can actually find a way to ensure that you have certain form of, constraint attached to them. So the 730-2040 is very open because it has no any constraint on the implementation of performance activities or tasks. Now, the key concept behind this one include defining the software quality assurance role, software product risks, understanding the relationship between the systems and software. These are the few concepts that would assist in the software quality assurance processes. At the end of the day, the standard would help you to ensure that you have improvement in your software process, and also the quality management system consistency will be maintained in your application or your software product. So there are a lot of things you have in this standard, but we have to ask ourselves, what is the key benefit in a very simple term of using this particular standard? Yes, we know you can initiate, plan, control, and execute the SQA processes for a project and a maintenance, for a software development project or a maintenance project. But what is the key benefit? So let's look at the scope to give us more information about the key benefit of this particular standard we have. In this standard, the scope of this standard is usually as a form of a single project. In this case, when you use this standard, please take note, when you use this standard, you are always trying to accomplish the business goals of the organization. And that is why you have two levels in this standard. You have the organization level, project level. The organization level, you have the organization work, which you establish the SQA framework that you're going to follow in the project, and then you negotiate the contract. So last week, when we were talking about, can we do more than the stakeholders ask us to do, or if you have some new concept you want to share and all that, all these things would happen when you're trying to negotiate that contract. Once that contract has been negotiated, and then you want to embark on the project, you can't change that contract. You may have a form of supplementary contract that you can use if you have some differences or some additions you want to bring on board. But also, the supplementary contract or agreement would have to be what? Be a clause that you need to insert into your original agreement. Let it be there that yes, few things are open to some changes or improvement as agreed upon by the parties. Every time I work on a project, let me say literally every day, I am always speaking with legal professionals, lawyers, IT lawyers, patent lawyers and all that. Because there are certain key performance indicators in a project that when you give a company to work on a project, they find it so hard to meet those key performance indicators. So you have to find a way of quantifying those indicators to ensure that in your contract, you actually capture that. For example, not only that performance is one of the key factors of software quality assurance, but what kind of performance, what level of performance, what are the key indicators for that particular performance, or security, or reliability, or maintainability, or fault tolerance. So the legal team always have a way of defining those KPIs. So the indicator for each and every factors of the software quality assurance will be this. If the performance level is below 50%, this could be what you either have to suffer as an organization, or performance level has to be maybe above 70%. So key performance indicators are very important. That's why when you negotiate in the contract, your name input is needed, everybody's input to ensure that, yes, all those key performance indicators in the contract, in this case, for software quality assurance, are actually being satisfied. And this is the minimum level of performance for these factors that we are going to take in the project. So please always negotiate these key performance indicators in your project. What I'm just telling you now is this has cost a lot of companies, millions of dollars, because they weren't having KPIs attached to the SQA factors. What they just said was, I need reliability, for example. But you never told me how much reliability do you actually need. Is it 99.9999? Is it 99.99? Or is it 99%? How many percent do you need? So some sectors, what they do is, if you're unable to give me this level of performance, let's say in this case for your SQA, this is what I am going to charge you. You have to refund back to the company. Sometimes you do that to put those companies right on top of their toes that they have to make it work. This is it. Or you don't get it done and then I charge you. And this is one of the ongoing practices in the few projects that I am currently working on, because if you don't satisfy that, and then definitely you have to either pay us back or we reduce it from what could be the balance of the payment on the project. So there are a lot of ways in which you can do that. So this also ensures that companies actually understand how much I need in terms of the performance associated with each and every SQA factors. So please, that contract negotiation is where you can put in all the information that you feel has to be there before you start working on the project. And this is done at the organization level. Once it moves into the project level, what you're thinking of is what? You do your planning, you start your activities, and then you close it. That's it. That's the end of the project. So this standard would always ask you, what are those organization work, the project work, how you bring them together, and then whatever you do, whatever you plan to accomplish will be based on the business goals of the organization. Be your stakeholders, it could be the sponsors, depending on what the project is coming from. So please take note of this, and the standard is widely applicable to many software quality assurance projects, and also software lifecycle models, either from the development or the management part or the continuous improvement part of it, is a very good standard you can use. Furthermore, this standard can also be integrated with project management practices to assist you in fine-tuning the communication or solving any problems that could come from the gap between the organization and the project level. So you can borrow project management concepts either from the Prince2 or the PMP. You can borrow this concept and bring them into the standard. It would make your work very beautiful, because then you would understand how the work that has been performed at the organization level can be appropriately utilized while working on the project that's at the project level. And you also understand how you can bring these two works together. So please feel free to always see how you want to customize the standard, but ensure that you satisfy the basic goals of what the standard is all about. So let's now look at the real-world application of this standard we have. If you're looking at selling some services, software services to a client, this standard is being used. For example, you have Accenture, you have Infosys. When they use this standard, you ensure that what? You can actually sell those services to your client. Or when trying to build in-house custom software for your internal IT organization, or you're looking at maybe internal IT department or unit or other unit, depending on what kind of software needs they have, you can also utilize this standard. Remember, you have two different levels: organization level, project level. You're bringing them together. These standards provide that adequate form of support to ensure that the business goals of that organization is achieved while you're working on that project. And also, when you're trying to develop and sell commercial software to organizations, this standard can also be used to ensure that you can develop and sell those software to those organizations. So please take note, right? In this particular slide, what I'm talking about is from the business model of the application of this particular standard, how you can apply it in the business world, whereby you get a much more better understanding of the need of the quality assurance in different business sectors. So for example, you know, definitely my client, Accenture or the Infosys, this could be the kind of requirement there. So if I'm building a particular set of services to them, this is what their requirement could be, and this is what I need to satisfy. And also, if we move to the end user software, you're developing, you're selling a software to end users. For example, Microsoft does that and Adobe does that as well. But when they do that, they always also will try to look into what are the needs of the quality assurance to ensure that the users, their needs are adequately being satisfied. So the quality assurance would always give you that sense of understanding in terms of the requirement of your consumers, other organizations, or the clients that you may have, or third parties that you may have. If I am Microsoft, I know, for example, if I'm using Microsoft Word, performance is very important. So I know that's what my users want to see. And at what level of performance, you look at the indicator. This standard can be used to achieve that. At the end of the day, you're sure of one, you're going to reduce your losses. You're going to sell your product more likely very successfully. And also, you have a contract, which you always do, either electronically or when you're trying to install a software, but you have a contract attached to it. The standard will also give you that support. You understand what are your users looking at, and then what is the organization itself looking at. So please, the application of this standard would always work across both the organization level and the project level. And also, if you plan to sell a software that could be embedded into hardware and system, for example, the digital cameras or airplane engines, you can also use the standard to give you that sense of understanding of what are the quality assurance needs in this particular commercial and end user framework and every other component that we have here. And then when we look into the other standard that we also have now, in terms of evaluating software quality. Remember on the first part, we were doing what? Initializing, planning, controlling, and executing the software quality assurance processes. Now we want to evaluate. So you can always combine these standards together, but avoid having too much overlap, because too much overlap you have will cost you a lot of money. You'll be repeating activities, repeating the result. And then it's taking a lot of money from you. And then it's taking a lot of time as well. That is why we have to ensure that we do the software quality planning properly, and then before we dive into a lot of, and in doing that, these are the standards that we need to guide us on how we plan to either initiate, plan, control, or execute our quality assurance processes, or how we plan to evaluate the software quality itself. So to evaluate software quality, 25.01.02011 is a standard you can use. It was last reviewed in 2017 and also confirmed, so it's still very much in use. The two key parts of this particular standard include the quality in use and what? The system/software product quality. These are two different parts this standard is all about. Now remember, the standard focuses strictly on the representation of your stakeholder needs, which in this case, I'm very much sure that we all have captured these needs into our contract that has been negotiated already. Because from that contract, we negotiate, we look at those needs, and then we will try to quantify how much time or how much money the company is going to charge, and then you give the breakdown of the project cost and everything you have to do, contingency and all that. And that is why we have to ensure that we focus on the representation of the stakeholder needs. It's not all about what I like. My passion is all about what is our stakeholders' needs. So two things can happen here. You can have the quality in use, and also you can also have the system/software product quality. So the first one is applicable why computer systems are being used. Look at it very well, right? In use, that's why I put it in bold. When you're using the software, the system in use, what are those quality when is it being used? While the other one is applicable to the computer system and the software product. We are not focusing on in use. The first part is focusing on when is in use, remember. So when the software or the product is in use, you're looking at few items like the effectiveness, the efficiency, satisfaction, freedom from risks, and also the content coverage. When is in use? So if you're trying to evaluate software quality when the product is being used, these are those characteristics of quality that you look at. The effectiveness, you try to look at what the success of that particular software that you have. And then when you come to the efficiency, you try to bring up what are those forms of either the performance, or the performance, and then you have lots of other things you can have under performance, like reliability and all that, or latency, depending on the nature of the project or the software you're looking into. Then you have a form of satisfaction, which is very important. And then you also have risk mitigation coming from the economic risk mitigation, the health and safety, and the environmental risks as well. And then you try to look at what the completeness or the coverage and the flexibility of the content associated with the product that is being in use. So some of the characteristics are further divided depending on what? The outcome of the interaction when the product is in use. So please, if you are trying to evaluate a software product, when is in use? Evaluation based on quality, these are the characteristics or the factors you look at if you're using this particular standard. On the other hand, these are the other characteristics or the factors that you look at generally for that same product that you have. So you have functional stability, reliability, performance efficiency, operability, security, compatibility, maintainability, portability. I said earlier, some of these factors, characteristics may not be complete in terms of there are some new ones you want to bring on board. But this is what the standard is focusing on. For example, from what we have here is, if you look at the reliability, you're trying to understand the performance of the systems over a period of time. Or the security, is it much more secure, access, identity, and a few things you're looking into. Or the maintainability. In terms of if you want to either make some changes or you want to modify some few tests in the particular system or the software that you have. And then portability, being able to deploy across different platforms. You have to understand that very carefully. So these are the few quality features you look into, and then you have to take care of them very carefully. So let me also give you a very simple scenario of what happened. I think just a few days ago, right? In fact, before this class, I just received a message from the developers, and then the engineers say, oh, they haven't been able to do this. So apparently, there's a particular module for a payment system or gateway we're trying to implement in an application. So what we thought was, we can use that across the other platforms, across, both for the Android and the iOS. At the end of the day, it wasn't the case. We couldn't totally. So we had to pay extra money for another developer that works on that to do that. So my major concern here, from the quality point of view, is what? The needs of what we have agreed upon with the stakeholder was, oh, this is going to work, no extra money, and then all that, is a form of our marketing stuff. But unfortunately, it was a very wrong calculation. We couldn't satisfy that particular need of the stakeholder. And that cost us extra money. So understanding how visible it is for you to deploy a product or from the code you have across different platforms is very important. Otherwise, it's going to incur extra cost. And if you're not careful, for example, if you are being stuck with a base code that you bought from another company that doesn't have that feature already, you may lose that client, or you're in trouble, because then you would not be able to satisfy that feature. And that might actually be the main feature, required by your clients. So please, let us always understand how visible it is for us to adapt either the source code or new versions of some product or the platform or anything to use in another environment or another product. And also from the user point of view, how easy is it for them to make the installations? Or you find that you want to replace a few stuff, you want to upgrade or fix some bugs or have some performance improvement. We have to ensure that how feasible it is for us to have those replacements or those upgrades. That's why portability is very important. And in doing that, please do not forget compliance. Otherwise, with the compliance, you may have issues with the use from the users or the country where it's being used, or for example, even having that same feature approved on the platform, say iOS or Android, you may have issues with that. So at the end of the day, it's what we need to ensure that whatever we do in terms of the project, from the software quality point of view, has to be based on what the needs, the want, and expectations of the stakeholder. So this is the characteristics you look into as well for the category B of this particular standard. Thank you for the first part of for a time in the first part of the lecture. I'm sure we can take a 10 minutes break, and then you can grab coffee, water, and then we come back, and then we can now have an interactive session where everyone is free to answer the questions we have based on your own understanding in your own ways. I would like you to start, let's do this together. Let's learn from each other. Let's practice together. That way, you're very much sure in the exams, you're actually putting down the correct answers, because you don't have it. It's an hour, 30 minutes. So you may think you have a lot of time, but when you start, before you know the time is gone, you may not have a lot of time. But if you understand how to, when you look at the questions, the directions where the questions are coming from, and how to approach them easily, I can assure you, you finish the exam within a very short period of time. So this is where we can practice together, so that what you understand where those questions are coming from and what are the possible answers for that particular question. Okay, so we can have 10 minutes. I think we have 8 minutes left, and then we come back, and then we can have the second part of the lecture today, which is on the software quality planning, looking at the scenario from the company in which we discussed about last week as well. Yeah. So see you shortly. Yeah. 7 minutes more. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for your time. And welcome back to the second part of the lecture. I guess we can get started. So we'll be looking at the software quality planning. I'll be needing a lot of information from you, and in response to the many of the few questions we have, to one, prepare you for the exam, and also secondly, and then also to assist you in your project as well. Okay, so this is an interactive session. Please feel free to share your points of view and your answers with us. And then you're allowed to use any resources, apart even from the ones we have given to you on Canvas, appendices, and all that. So the overview, we're going to look at the structure of the software quality plan, and then we try to have a little bit of information about the standards we have talked about, including the ones in the appendix. And then we look at also the quality assurance and control as a resource. And then you can now make comment on the structure of the quality software quality plan. And then we'll look at the standards on the software quality. And also lastly, we can now talk about the quality assurance and control. So we're trying to bring all this content together. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that we have that form of appropriate software quality planning, which is always done prior to the software quality assurance. So now we're trying to look at your project. You can create documents and then you can discuss in the class based on what we have here. But here, what we're trying to do here is to look at your open source project that you have chosen. Or you can share your answer with your teammate. That means you can share the answers with us here. We're together here. So in this case is you think of the quality goals you would like to have in your product. You state 5 of them, and then you try to have a form of procedure to measure its compliance. For example, if reliability is one of the goals, then state how do you plan to measure reliability. And the quality is achieved in certain part by reviewing the multiple steps during the development process and describe what you need to do to deploy, implement, and also the objectives of such a procedure. We have design review and also code inspection. So you can understand from here that these are few benefits of why you have been asked to write on code inspection, design review, or the walkthrough procedure, to name a few. And then software has to be tested at various levels, and then enumerate the tools you need to deploy a quality plan. Include the tools such as management support, change control, testing, and then other tools you might need as well. So this is the work plan you have based on the software quality plan, and this will give you more knowledge and direction when you're trying to put all this content, for example, the design review and code inspection as part of your project. So for the first discussion we have tonight is looking at the document you have. What is the purpose of the 730-2022 and then the 730-2014 standards? What is the purpose? Can we have anyone to give it a try? Because of the two standards we have. You can use any resources available to you, but give it to us in your own words. Let's see that, yes, we have that understanding of why we having these two standards. The first one established in 2014, and then the second one, the other one established in the year 2002. So what do you think might be the purpose of having this? Anyone would like to try? Ankit, do you want to try?
Yes, Sadiq.
Yes, please. Would you like to try the question?
Actually, the purpose of these standards is to provide the quality assurance and the features what customers are seeking for the software and what the additional features we can provide under the strict governance factors, I think.
Okay, so in addition, your answer, thank you, is very good. In addition to that answer, right, don't forget two things. When you look at the 2014, right, the processes of the software quality assurance is very important. You need to just add that to the answer you have. And then the 2002 one, you need to add the plan, software quality assurance plan to it. If you add these two things to your answer, very much good to go.
Thanks, Adi.
You're welcome. Thank you. So please, when we're looking at your exam papers, when we look at this question, for example, from the answer we have from Ankit is a very good answer. We'll look at it, fine. And then we'll try to look for more and say, okay, where is the planning? So the first thing we do, we try to interpret what Ankit has just said. Is the plan part of it? Okay, it's part of it, and that is fine. But if someone is struggling to understand if it's part of it, a reviewer might just say, okay, maybe this is not part of it. But if it's clearly written there, that plan, SQA plan for it, and the other one SQA, processes, then the reviewer wouldn't have much, question to ask for that particular answer. Okay, so thank you very much, Ankit. In the exam, right, it's very possible that there might be some things that you may not be able to remember at that part of your time because there are a lot of things you're looking into. So as such, being able to look at these questions from what we have discussed and that free will of this is what you think might be the answer. And then we gradually starting, looking at it together till we get to the right answer that we need. This same thing applies to us as well. We have a session, we discuss with our colleagues, and then sometimes you just give them from the top of your head and they say, okay, fine. They give you a little bit addition to that and then your answer is good to go. By the time one or two times, multiple times you go over this ones, before you know it, you can actually have, the full answer to that particular question. So thank you very much, Ankit, for the answer for that particular question. And then second question is, the reason why we are introducing you to, or we have introduced you to the 2002 standard is because of the document it has. This is very important to your project for you to understand how to write those documents, how to plan. You have those defects and you're already thinking of the improvement. How do you plan? That is why we introduce you to the 2002 standard for you to understand what are those documents that you need to support your planning, which is one of the important parts of your project. So in this case, you can have the management plan, for example, and then to name a few other plans as well. So let's say, for example, in the second question, you choose a document in this particular plan. How do you describe its content? So I'll give it to you, right? From the few plans we have here, we have the management, we have documentation, we have the reporting, we have the media control, we have training, we have risk management, we have record collection. You can choose anyone. So how would you describe any of this document that we have and its content? I will go first. Let me choose one. For example, if I'm choosing management, in the management document, what we want to see is one, the organization in terms of who is responsible for deploying the quality assurance mechanism, which could also include, let me say, quality assurance and control mechanism. And also you can also have the tasks, which is very important. What are those tasks that needs to be performed across the stages of the project? And also we can look at the roles, identifying the roles and also the responsibilities of each and every team member in your project. And also what are those resources that are needed in order for us to deploy the software quality assurance and control mechanism. So now I have chosen the management document and I have described that. So you can take that and put that under your project. So anyone wants to go choose any other plan? Yes, please.
Okay, I
Yes,
actually
please.
got a question regarding this. So
Yes.
just now you choose the management document, right? And then some of the things that you mentioned are the tags, the identifying roles and responsibilities and stuff like that. So connecting this with our project. So when we write the management document, for example, so for the roles and responsibilities, is it our roles or responsibilities in the team, or is it those who actually wrote the code?
No, your team is now your
team,
project.
right? Okay.
Yeah, it's not. So now it has become your project. This is now your project. You are the one in charge of the project now. Very good question. Oh, very good question. Very good. Yeah. So you see, these are the questions. So the same thing as well in the exam, right? When a question comes to you in this case, please take note. If you're not being given any scenario, please take note. I'm begging you. Why? Because this in the last 2 years, many students would always miss out that thing called scenario. If a scenario is given to you, answer the question based on the scenario given to you. If the scenario is not given to you, you can choose any other scenario you want, either your project or any other one is comfortable for you. So please take note of that very well. In fact, any question you see, please just look through and look for that word scenario, if it's there or not, so that you understand how much flexibility do you have in answering such a question. Very interesting question. Thank you very much. Any question? Anyone would like to go into another part? Yeah, we have an answer from Howard that said, I think generally to synthesize the quality measurement among both developers and stakeholders, or to have equal understanding of them both on both sides. I think I would love to combine your two answers. That way to make it much more stronger and very interesting. So if we combine those two answers, this is very good. And then take note, we need to add processes to the 2014 standard, and then we need to add planning to the 2002 standard. If you put that and then take these two things, put it across each other, that should be fine as well. Because sometimes some reviewers, right, they are looking for those keywords. When they try to reinterpret your answer over and over again, if it's not sinking in their head that the keyword is not there, your interpretation is, and I don't understand what you're interpreting or what the answer is all about, then at that point, a reviewer, may look at it and say, okay, I don't know what this is all about. But if the keywords are there, or the explanation towards the keyword, what the planning, what the processes are all about, then that should be fine. So please, one good way of also answering questions in this unit is understand those keywords or their meaning. That way, in the exam, it's easier for you to put down either based on the scenario or based on the question you have been asked, if it's a general question. Okay, so I have done for management. Please take note of the other documents you need, either from the risk management, the training, the documentation, the testing, and all that. Please have a look at that. We have another question that says, choose one of the review processes described in this particular document that you think applies to your product and describes its details. No more than 3 paragraphs, for example. Review processes. And the first question will now be, what do we understand by review processes? When we say review processes, what are we talking about? Would anyone would like to help us with that? Anand, would you like to go for this one? Review processes. From your basic understanding should be fine. It doesn't have to be anything much detailed.
Professor, sorry, I couldn't hear you properly. Can you go about the question one more time, please?
Yes. So the question says is, choose one of the review processes described in the IEEE 730-2002 standard that you think applies to your product and describe its details. So now it's just a review process. What do you think about the review process? When you think about the review processes in general, you can say anything about just review. When you're doing that review, what is really happening? What are those things you're looking at, you're trying to do?
Okay, so I'm not sure about the IEEE, but review process in general, the thing which was happening in my previous company where I worked was, you're saying about the coding, right? I mean, the product as such, it's a code too, right?
Yeah, it's fine. Anyone is fine. Yeah, the code. Yes, sure. Let's use that.
Okay.
Sure, no problem. Let's use that.
So what will happen is that, like, first, as such, in the initial stages, they would first check whether the code really achieves what it has to do. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is nothing but after conforming with that one, they would probably go on to the optimization and the usage of the code standards, like how the code is used, and is there any memory leaks are there, and is there any other stuff which needs to be improved. Okay, so that thing is there. And the third, second thing, another thing would be like they would be checking the entire product as such, like an integration testing or something, because the code which you have done should not be breaking the other stuff, the other features, other products. So this integration test will also be part of the review system. That's the second thing. And the third thing is nothing but the optimization, which I told you. So, these are the things in general I'm saying. Would that be okay?
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Anand. You have given us a high-level answer, which makes me very happy because you have been able to apply those content we have in the standard and give us a real-world answer based on your project. So this is very interesting. So for example, in the exam, if a question comes in this way, is an open-ended in terms of no scenario, this answer will be very good to go because you have been able to apply that verification and validation plan review into your own project. You have been able to understand what are those auditing parts that you have applied into your project, and also the specifications review, which what you said all about what the project is all about, what it's about to do. So you have been able to apply this content into your project, and this is very interesting. So this is what we're talking about, right? Thank you very much, Anand. This is very interesting. So when I hear answers like these that are applied or high-level answer that is using the minimum features we have in the standard, it shows, that definitely we can always integrate many of these reviews or these features, and then we see how we can make them work in the real world. So when we're talking about review, in a nutshell, you're trying to review those processes, what the actions are supposed to be doing, the action that are supposed to be happening in that such a project or from the sub products. In this case, you try to review the specifications or the architecture design that you have been working on trying to build for the data structures, the design itself, the plan for verification, validation, the auditing, managerial reviews, and also the configuration or implementation. So you're trying to review all these things associated with your project. And this is what this particular review is all about. And then you have lots of things you can consider on the reviews, as long as you are trying to check or review all those things that have been defined. It could be from processes, from tasks, from actions, from any of the activities associated with the application or the software product, in general. So thank you very much, Anand, and please feel free to use that in your answers. And please don't forget, like I said, if you look at the review activities we have in the 2002 standard, 2002 standard, it will give you a lot of information on so many other things can be done under each and every activity, either from the physical review, either from the physical audit and many other activities that you can do, right? And then also lastly for this question is, we have an answer that says, could you please give us an example of physical audit review? So when you look at the physical audit review now, you have to consider that in the context of the project that you're working on. So what kind of project you're working on? Do you need the physical audit in your project as such? Or what you can do now is you try to confirm what are those components that are related to your product. I think it makes it easier. Yes, component related to your product, and then you try to perform that form of evaluation, or let me say a form of independent evaluation, right? Looking at those components or those configurations associated with your particular software that you have. So in this case, is whenever you have that audit, always focus on that independent evaluation. So in this case, if we look at the physical audit, based on the nature of the project that you have been given in this unit, you can say a form of independent evaluation of the configuration or the component associated with that project you're working on. Yeah. So we also have a question that says, how is detailed design review different from the rest of the review? So when you look at the design already, I'm sure you have seen how your project works, how is it being done, and also, if possible, you've been able to understand the development processes associated with that particular product. So in this case is what? You try to review those activities that are what? Supporting the development of that your particular product. So that's coming from the design point of view. Look at the evaluating the activities associated with that same product that you have. To do this, you can look at the product you're working on very carefully, and then usually you should be able to at least either come up with those designs, from the way you're looking at how the application, how the software functions, or you try to try to see if you can actually see some document that works on the development process, associated with that particular, product. So at the end of the day is what you try to evaluate all those processes. Remember, quality assurance, we have a requirement. Take those processes, evaluate them, and check whether the requirements have been satisfied. Right. So for the design review, you look at it from how the application was developed, and then try to evaluate it with respect to what you have the requirement associated with that particular product that you have. We also have write 5 features in your product that are related to any of the following aspects of the second standard, which is the 25012 standard. So now, look at this question very well. I want us to do this together. You may be given a lot of items, throw them around. Let's say 15, let's say 10 items, for example, and you've been asked, put them where they belong into the 25010 2011 standard. Would anyone like to take one of these? And then you try to put them where they belong to in the standard. Resource utilization. Where should we have resource utilization? If I go back to the previous slide, you can look at here. Where do we have resource utilization? You can see where we have it there, right? So in this case, you cannot talk about that performance efficiency, interoperability, nullability, maintainability. So what I can say is you need to have a form of logic in which you understand what is the beginning and towards the end of those characteristics associated with this particular product, right? So is this coming under the quality in use, or is it coming under the software product quality? So please try and understand that for this particular question. So now we move to the next one on the quality assurance and control. You can read the document we have on Canvas to give you some more information about what the quality assurance and control is all about. And then write one action devoted to prevent errors deriving from lack of expertise of team members. I would like one of us to please help us here, please. How do we prevent errors deriving from lack of expertise of team members? You're working in a team where it's very possible some of us may not have certain experience, like I can tell you this evening from what Anand just said, I personally have learned from what Anand said, right? Because now I can see, how I can also combine, because what Anand has done is to combine few of those review activities, in their product, which sounds very interesting, right? So I'm also going to try that in the real project and see how that actually works, right? So when we're now looking at what errors, based on lack of expertise from team members, how do we prevent those kind of errors? Some team members are better than us in a project. We learn from them. So, but how do we prevent those errors from what? The lack of expertise of team members. What are we going to do in this case? What do you think we should do in general? Let's make it very open. What should we do? Lack of expertise from team members who want to prevent the errors. What are we going to do? Because we need to ensure that we have measures to apply to one, even let's avoid those errors from the potential sources. It's very important. If we can avoid those errors, we're going to enjoy our project very well. What are we going to do? What would you advise we do? How do we remove these errors? Anyone would like to try? What would you advise us to do? Or what have you been doing in your project from lack of expertise of team members? So I will share mine with you, what I always try to do with, we have an answer from Ken that says screening. Very interesting answer, Ken. I love the answer very well, right? Only one thing I'm thinking is, if we do screening, let's say based on roles and responsibilities, that might be interesting, right? So Ken, what you could do, Ken, is you may want to complete your answers in the future, screening in what ways or what time. So if we're trying to assign, let me make it much more, maybe a little bit more, much more nicer to me, right? Maybe we're trying to maybe assign roles, our responsibilities, maybe based on, your capabilities and all that. Thank you very much, Hawa. So Ken, screening, you can attach that to roles and responsibilities. That is very good. And then Hanan, communication, beautiful. So communication is one of the major mechanisms in a project. It's one of the key success of any project in this world. Communication is very important. So please, let's hold that communication very well in the project. Thank you very much, Hawa. This is an excellent answer. Thank you very much, Kel. This is also an excellent answer. But don't forget, please, to attach that to what, if possible, roles and responsibilities. And also, when you communicate, you have agreement, collaboration. These are a few ways in which we can prevent errors as a result of lack of expertise. Learning from one another. Remember, we have that as part of these particular standards we have, right? Learning. Learnability, look at it under operationability or operability, learnability. It's very important. All the answers, many of them are here. So when you always see questions from this standard, right? The first thing you think about is what? Where does this question falls under the category of this particular standard? If you understand that, it becomes a lot easier for you to answer a question on this particular standard. And also, if you want to detect the faults related to the performance in your product, what actions are we going to carry? What action are we going to carry out? One action to detect the performance faults in a product. What are we going to do? What do you think we should do? Performance problem. What are we going to do? Oh, sorry. What are we going to do from performance problem? How do we detect those faults arising from the performance of the product? How do we detect that kind of faults? How do we detect it? Remember, there are many techniques that have been designed in order for you to react, after few faults. But now we're saying, how do we detect? Thank you very much for your answers. Very interesting. Feedback is very good. I love the feedback. Review performance, yes. Review politically is very good. Data collection to reporting also very good. Yes. Testing as well. Yes, testing, yes. Stress testing, beautiful. You can do that as well. At the end of the day, please don't forget, let's come back here, is look where we can put where it belongs to in this particular category, here or here. But thank you. Very good answers. Very good. I wish we were all in the classroom together. This would have been much more interesting when we have two groups, and let's see with the groups, that would always come, on top of the other group at the end of the, every of the, question discussions we have, and then we can always have, one group to be a winner. That'll be very interesting, but all the same, thank you very much for your answer. It's very interesting. And then, can you think of an instance in which an initially detected defect is then ruled out as not a defect upon closer inspection? So in this case, it's very possible from the beginning of your project or at a particular instance, what you detected, as a defect may not actually, be a defect, at the end of after a closure loop. So what we can do is now we have to really understand from the standard we have right before us is to understand where is this going to fit in? Is it coming from the reliability, functional suitability, and then, other few characteristics that we have? So look into your project and then try to understand at what instance can this happen. We have a question that says, can you please get an example for this question? Okay, so let's see. So we have a software now that before submitting the software, say to the Apple or the Google Store, everything was working, we had a little bit of issue with them, but because of the timeline, we just had to submit. So we thought, for example, it was going to be, oh, this doesn't, this what is it called? This is not going to be approved, by them. But, like on the other hand, we're just surprised, and it became, it came back and it was approved, knowing fully well, for example, that this could be a defect. The future we are using, on location permission could be a defect, but, to us, but it was ruled out by, when the Apple were just trying to review, trying to inspect, because before you usually, they accept your app on their store, they have to always, review what you have. They check the code, they check to be sure, yes, everything is good to go and all that. And they can tell you if there's any problem. So what we thought, might be because of the time involved, we just needed to get this out of the way as soon as possible, but it came back approved. That means it was actually a very good work done, but we're actually being skeptical about, oh, can we do this? Or, we shouldn't do that. So, and if we now come back to this particular standard, if we now look into, let's say, for example, we have under, let's go back to, let's say, quality assurance and control. One thing you can also do is to also understand that way in which you want to have that form of defect, prevention and also containment, at the same time. So if you can follow these activities, both for the containment, prevention and the containment, is always a way also whereby at first you might think what you detected is a defect, but when you're now looking at the prevention, you may actually see that that same item you have could be required or a specific need in a particular section of your project. So as such, what you felt was a defect could now be very important to another section of your project, which in this case may not be regarded as a defect. We have from Anki that says, defect containment refers to this approach. Defect containment refers to the ability of a software product to detect failure and maintain it within a reasonable period of time. This approach, not all failure can be detected. Thus, some additional measures need to be put in place. Follow. Yes, thank you very much, Ankit. So the answer from Ankit also on defect containment refers to the ability of a software product to detect a failure and maintain its effects within some reasonable bounds that still allow the product to proceed. The approach in this stage is different. Not all faults can be detected. Thus, some additional measures need to be put in place for when a failure occurs to minimize its impact. Thank you very much, Ankit. In this case, please don't forget, take a look at both the defect prevention and also the containment in terms of how you want to react every day. So give an example of how you would implement one system to test your product, right? So how would you implement to test your products? In this case is a different kind of testing mechanism you can look at to see how you can test your products. So now on the structure of quality plan, documentation about your project, resources you can use, please, in the work plan, and as you're working with your team, always comment together on the quality goals for your product. You might feel sometimes what you want to say, your group wouldn't take it, but at least try. Let them know, based on the defect you have identified, the improvement you may like to recommend, there are some quality goals you feel are required for this particular product. So please let your team member understand. And then you can use the standards as a back to show them this standard says these particular goals are very important, or based on what you really want to achieve. And then that way it's easier for you to also let your team members know the quality goals that are required for the product, which could be based on what you have identified. And also comment on the design review and also the code inspection. All the other plans we gave, either coming from the walkthrough procedure and many other ones we have talked about, please comment on all these things together with your team member. That way, it's much more easier for you to understand what needs to be done or how is it being done. Design review, code inspection, these are activities that are always carried out when it comes to software quality assurance. So you want to ensure that you plan for them ahead before going into either meeting up with this, satisfying the standard or the needs, wants, and expectations of your stakeholders. Also, review the definition and levels of testing. What kind of testing do you need? At what level, what time, what period? There are different kinds of testing and there are different levels. There are kind of testings that we always perform. Also, please, based on your project, discuss and define those level of testing together. Collect the name of tools used for quality testing. In this unit, you will be able to look at few concepts that you can use quality testing. The concept which will represent as part of the tools, you will be able to apply them to do some specific testing. A good example would be, I'm working on a product where it's for buying and selling. So for the product, I need to go through via a third party to always sell, to the buyer as a seller. So for example, if I'm selling to Otto or Ankis or Anan or a lot of people I'm selling that means I need to go to third party. That's going to be cumbersome. The process is involved. We are going to show you how you can do that calculation and say this process is a lot. And then you understand the complexity of those processes, which is also part of the quality testing, because you don't want to have that complexity in the processes, in the procedures associated with your application. So please have a look at your project and try to understand the structure of the quality plan. These are all the things you need in there: walkthrough procedure, code review, code inspection, design review. What are the goals? What are the testing ways? So put all these things together in your plan. At the end, you will ensure that the stakeholders' needs and wants and expectations will be adequately satisfied in your project. So now, similarly to the standards we have, I'd like to reiterate as well is the 730-2002 standard has a lot of details on planning, focus on planning, and that's why we're introducing these in this particular session alongside with the 2014 version of the standard as well. So review the standard, understand is the most important part, documentation, management, review, and many other parts you have, auditing, testing, and all that, and understand why is it useful. Supporting, it's supporting the quality software, quality, planning as well. That's what it's all about. And what role do you see it play in a company that provides software to be used within another product? So have a look at that as well. And then explain which document do you think is special to your product. So in my case, if I review this standard, the purpose is what? To have a very good software quality assurance plan. Why is it useful? Yes, at least I can determine or define roles, responsibility, management, to name a few. What role do you see it play in a company that provides software to be used within another product, say a library? In this case, I'm going to have that form of documentation, appropriate, management, auditing, review, and then to name a few. So all these activities can be performed in this same standard, the benefit to a company, risk management, also for training, also for a lot of control, supply control and all that. So you can use it to do a lot of things, right? So explain which document do you think is special to my product. To my product, usually I would always take two. I will always take two particular, documents. I'll take one management document, and I will always take the documentation document because this is my product. In your product, you may want to choose risk management, you may want to choose, standard. It depends on you. You can choose anyone that you feel is much more special to your product. And then comment on different review processes. Like we said earlier, there are a lot of reviews that could happen in the project, right? Either you're trying to do the auditing, which could be the physical audit, or maybe design review, or your architectural review, or the managerial review, and a lot of configuration, a lot of reviews you can do. So you can describe any one of them and then differentiate them, from one another. At the end of the day, is all the reviews you are performing, you want them to be what? At the end of the day, you're looking at what? Let us ensure that yes, the stakeholders' requirements have been satisfied. That's very important. And then regarding the ISO IEC 5025010, review the quality in use model. Remember, the quality in use model, has the 5 characteristics, when that are being looked into when the product is in use. Efficiency, one of them. Don't forget that, please. And also, if you review the quality model, that is the other side, provide an example of what aspect it includes in my project. So I could say one thing very well: reliability, performance, security, and also portability, being able to have that compliance or adaptability so that I can use it across other platforms, right? So you can have a look at them and then relate them to your project as well. And also for this as well, you have, take a look at the note on quality assurance and control and the software quality management. When you look at this document, comment on each division, defect handling, prevention, reduction, containment, describe all the techniques in these areas. For example, if you look at defect prevention, you're always trying to detect your defect prevention. You're trying to always prevent defects, right? By solving the problems that is originating or is coming from the origin. So now you're solving the problem looking at the origin of where the problem comes from. So if you want to solve any problem in this case is, if let's say the origin of the problem is level 1 and you're in level 2, you go back to level 1 and solve the problem, because that is the origin of the problem, right? That's one thing about the defect prevention. You can also look for the different containment. How do you want to react, after a failure, has been detected? Okay, and then also give example about all the areas that you have associated with this particular the prevention, the handling, prevention, reduction, and also the containment, and also comment on other defect prevention techniques. Few techniques you can use here. One include knowledge is very important. In this case, you're looking at what your knowledge about the methodology, the tools, the technology, the platform is very important. It's a very good way to prevent defects. That is why you see organizations, when we work on projects, we have, for example, people that work on iOS, Android, and many other. Yes, expertise. Thank you, Ankit. Yes, expertise is very important. Software, because we have to ensure that yes, the team working have that knowledge to understand the techniques. So an iOS developer understand what needs to be done. So if you're doing the testing, the quality assurance based on the requirement of the stakeholder, you understand those things that you're looking for and how to work on them as well. This is very important. So expertise is very important and one of the key success for defect prevention. And also don't forget knowledge. Expertise would also now go deep into how much knowledge you have about those platforms, the tools that are being used, or the technologies, and also understanding what the domain itself, all these things are things that you have to put them together and look at how much they influence your project. At the end of the day, they would help you towards, your defining or analyzing or agreeing on a defect or set of defect prevention techniques. So please feel free to discuss this with your colleagues and your teammates as well to give you more information, about the quality assurance and control, which we have looked into, to an extent in this particular session. Any question for today's lecture, please? Any question on today's session for your lab, please, you can ask any question. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about this 10 minutes, both for the, we'll be taking questions both for the lecture and the lab at the end of the lecture. So I'll try and at least finish some time, earlier than this possible, because we only have 10 minutes left. So we can take questions from the lab. If you have questions from your project, you want to share with us, or you have some questions from the lab, from the lecture, please let us know, please. We can also learn from you, from what your group is. Yes. Where do we get data structures from? Data structures, you get them from your project itself. So you have to look at the project on itself, and then from the architecture you have, see how you can, bring out the data structure from the architecture. Already is there in your project, because you are not building from the scratch. You already have a data structure already. What you need to do is now for you to understand how to extract those data structure, and then data structure, when you look at it very well, it's all about, how the data is being, either well structured or stored or managed in the application, right? So you can extract that from your architecture or the project you have in general. What you can do also is you can have a group, some members in your group, to actually, take some few features, functionalities, and extract on those data structures. Also, you can agree on what are those, data type you're looking for the data structures and all that. This will also help you to actually determine, how the data structures of your application actually works. So please, you can extract it from your application. Either when you start running the application, look at data structures, what kind of data type are you using, how data is being managed and all that.
So Sadiq, about that,
yes, please.
About the data structure. So is data structure the same as data type?
Data type can be a subset of the data structure. So data structure is an overall umbrella, and then within that, you can have a data type within that. Or let me say, if you have a lot of data types, right, associated with your applications. So look at how these data types are either linked together, either from this feature to that one. So for example, you're entering, for example, here from name, here from numbers, and it goes, let's say, from the home page to either you want to send a message, depending on the app you're working on, right? So that architecture that you have, say you have, let's say, for example, you have the UI user interface, and then under that you have the messaging part. It goes to that. So when you look at that, you can start as a data type coming from one of the features to the other. So you can look at the data type, as as also a subset, of the data structures that you have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Professor.
Yes, please.
So I do have some doubt regarding the previous lab session documents.
Okay.
Like you do have the sample initial quality assurance mechanism template, right?
Yes, please.
Is it possible for you to explain what do you mean by the walkthrough procedures, and what do you mean by providing demonstration process, and what should we write under each thing? Like what exactly is needed?
Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much for the question. So let's start from the walkthrough procedure, right? So this is your project. You define your walkthrough procedure. So a walkthrough procedure actually, in this particular unit, and in general, it depends on your project, which, let's say, the context of your project. So the procedure itself can be regarded as a form of a demonstration process of the quality improvement outcome that your team has produced, right? How do you plan to demonstrate what you have been able to achieve, or those quality improvement outcome that you were able to produce in your team. So in this case is you want to have a procedure in which, for example, you and I, if we're on the same team, we can use that to demonstrate how we have been able to achieve those quality improvement outcome in the project. Or it could be from the defects that we have been able to extract it from the product itself. So take a look at the walkthrough procedure also as a form of a demonstration process of either the quality defect or the quality improvement outcomes that you have been able to produce in your project. So this is actually a very, maybe not more than maybe 10, 15 lines or 20 or so. It's just a procedure. Say, okay, this is how we plan to demonstrate, the outcomes or the defects we have been able to, either extracted or we have been able to produce the improvement in our project. So everyone would always have his own walkthrough procedure on how you want to demonstrate, those quality, defects or improvement that you have been able to achieve, or produce in your group. And then when you look at the code review process itself, is with this process, you have a source code. How does everyone in your team member look at that source code? Or how does your team member explore that source code, and you want to be aware of any alterations that could be made to it? So you can say, fine, every team member, this is how you want to look. When you look at this source code, this is how you want to either make some changes or review this thing here or check this and all that. Because remember, right, you already have your quality factors that you're looking at. So based on the quality factors is what? Say performance. Okay, fine. For performance now, what I want now is for performance is when I look at the source code, I am looking at what? Those source code, for example, let's say that relates to security or performance, for example. And then if you want to make any alteration to that, this is what you need to do. So when you do this, every team member would always follow that review process when they are trying to review the source code of your project. So in general, you can look at the code review process as a form of process that every team member would follow when they are trying to review, which in this case, they're trying to explore or they're trying to make any alterations to your source code, so that in the future or when the project start becomes a lot more complicated, right? And you want to go back and look for something, a particular code, you go back and look at, okay, this was the review process that everyone followed. And as such, this is what or where we're looking for, how we need to get to that item we're looking for. So please have that similar review process that can be utilized by everyone in your group, that can be followed by everyone in your group to ensure that this is how you always view, you explore, you make alterations, or you try to look at the quality factors based on you using that to review, the source code you have. And then when you now look at the evaluation as well, is the evaluation process has to do with one, let's say your requirement, your requirement gathering, your reporting associated with your project. So when you want to have a process in which every team member would follow in terms of what? Gathering some requirement or data associated with the project you're working on, or you want to ensure this is how we do reporting, when we evaluated, and this is how you report, what you have evaluated, so that simple way in which everyone will follow to do that process is what we're looking for. How do you gather data for your project? Or how do you report be anything, from your project, based on what you have evaluated from that, quality perspective? Yeah. So at the end of the day, these mechanisms would guide you, one, towards having that form of similar ways and processes in either reviewing, demonstrating, or evaluating your source code or any part of your project in general. And then when you now look at, let's say, the software testing mechanism in this case is you're trying to look for what? What are those existing techniques, right, or what are those tools or techniques that are being used in your project for software testing. So usually in your project, right, that there could be some folders in your project, which already you source code. Look for those folders there and see if there's a folder that describes maybe like JUnit or something there. There could be some test files or something that there, for that project. So if you have them, in this case is what? That will represent the techniques that are actually being used in your project for software testing. So when you want to not do your testing, you know what has been used before. If you want to continue using that, or based on the requirements of the lab, you have to bring in new tools or techniques to do that, which we're going to also show you new techniques and new tools to do that. So at the end of the day, all these mechanisms would guide you towards ensuring that every team member is on the same page, you're following the same procedure and same process, either when you're trying to review or evaluate any part of your project or your source code, or you're trying to look at those quality factors you want to have, because there are a lot of factors involved. So you want to be sure if you're evaluating or we're reviewing, we're doing it in line with this particular factors or in line with this particular process or procedures we have. So these are very short ways of explaining how the guidances work in your team, so that when the reviewer is now trying to mark your work, right? When we read that, we know, okay, this is how the review process of the source code works in your own project, or this is how you've evaluated or you did data gathering with your project. Oh, this is how the software, called assurance factors, how they have been followed in your project. So this would guide everyone in your team towards ensuring that the stakeholders' requirements are being met. Because if you don't have these procedures, processes that have been defined already, you may not be able to achieve the stakeholder goals, needs, and also maybe his needs and expectations as well, because everybody can just start working on reviewing, what part they feel they should review, or what factors they feel they should look into, or they can just demonstrate to you how they feel on themselves to you. But with these procedures and processes, you're going to have that ways in which everyone in your team member does something, almost the same, as every other person in your team member. And then if you have more, more to these, please let us know that we can give you more examples to this. But I hope this explanation works, based on the question you asked.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. So another question, I think you have covered this, but I just want to reconfirm it one more time. So these documents need to be filled out, and it has to be like in our storage and submitted during the assignment time, or how does that work?
Yes, so you do it now, you keep it with you, week 6, you submit everything together. Remember, right, this walkthrough procedure, report and all that, they'll be the same for everybody in the team, because you're using the same walkthrough procedure for everybody, the same code review process for everybody, the same process for evaluation for everybody. So they will be the same for everybody in your team, these procedures and processes that you're using. And then when you work on them for this week, you keep them with you. At the end of week 6, you take all the folders and then you attach as your submission on Canvas.
Okay, so each has to submit the same copy of it, right?
Yes. So there's some documents that are the same, not a problem. So for these processes, every project would always have the same, let's say, code review process. So as such, we know that the code review process for you and your other team members will be the same.
Okay. So, I mean, you've given us the template. Is it possible for us to give us a document which consists of a sample code evaluation process? Because the evaluation process, it is actually a limitation to our own imagination creation stuff, right? Creative stuff, right? Because with my creativity, I can also get to some other software evaluation process rather than the one which is like prescribed or which is in context with this unit. So is it possible for you to give a basic guideline towards how the software evaluation process or the different processes should be?
Thank you very much. So the guideline we will give you, which is right there before you, is the standards that we have just talked about today. If you look at those standards, you can extract those evaluation processes from there and then relate them choose the one and relate them to your project. So anything you're looking for in this unit, always look at the standards you have. Even in fact, sometimes if you feel it's not available in the standards we have given you, look at the other software quality standards. You would always see it there. And you can adapt it, look at it, and then relate it to your own project, and then provide your own process. If it's for evaluation, you provide evaluation process, but they are available in all the standards that, for software quality. So these are the places where you would always get the particular standards to follow. We gave you the template to ease the stress in terms of you trying to understand what do we need to put in this document and all that. But because of the nature of the project, coming from different viewpoints, different factors and all that, we don't want a situation whereby some groups are trying to squeeze their work to match, it has to be this same evaluation process. So rather, we try to give you what we feel could be in that document. You can add more to it, or you can just use the one we have given. They are all sample document. But to avoid groups trying to fit into that standard, that content that we could provide, it's better for us to just at least provide that. So it was a very huge decision for us to make, to give you the template, because allowing you to do everything from the scratch, that would also take a lot of time, which you don't have. So we have done the first part for you, and that any other content you need for any of those parts, many of the standards have it. If you can't find it in any of the standard, you can look at the report on software quality projects from the industry. You would always see how they do their evaluation and see if it relates to your own project, and then you can, adapt what they have from there.
Yes, thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a question from Ananda says, okay, so beautiful. Okay, so I think we're good to go. Any other question, please? I'm so sorry taking for your time. Thank you very much for your time this week. And then let me leave you to join your tutorial session tonight. And then I'll see you next week. Thank you. And then sorry for taking so much of your time. I will try and manage the time next time so that they will always finish before time. Okay, I promise you, I'll keep to my promise next time. Okay, thank you very much for your time today, and then see you next week. Okay, have a beautiful evening and a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, Adik. See you next week.
Thank you so much. See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. See you next week. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Professor, are you there?